Yes, we're from the state government. We're here to help. But we wanted to communicate. We didn't want to be dictatorial. We sat down with them. Tell us what you need. What are your problems? Do you have funding? How many staffers do you have? Do you have any consulting contracts available? Where can we move money around to solve a problem for you? We're going to make this happen. We just need to figure out how, and also try to build a framework that everyone can use.
This is a Security Weekly production. Security Weekly is a resource of Cyber Risk Alliance.
The Cybersecurity Collaborative, in conjunction with Cyber Reason, is proud to present CISO Stories. Each week, CISO Stories takes a deep dive on security leadership. The Cybersecurity Collaborative is a unique membership community enabling cybersecurity leaders to work together in a trusted environment. To learn more, visit securityweekly.com/CSC. I'm your host, Todd Fitzgerald, and this week we welcome Samantha Thomas, former CTO, CPO, CSO, and CISO at various state of California departments.
Back in the 80s, there was a criminal activity here in California where a stalker had gone into a California Department of Motor Vehicle office and acquired the name and address of an actress and continued on to stalk her, and she was murdered by this gentleman, which raised the ire of many citizens concerning the privacy of the information at these Department of Motor Vehicle field offices and how easy it was to obtain this personally identifiable information. So a law was passed, and it required a lot of movement of information at the DMV, and they hired a team of people to start this Information Protection Services Office. And at the time, I'm going to age myself, I was working some Fox Pro, Quattro Pro, fill in the blank. Someone tapped me for the work I was doing at the time to come on over and build this office. So we went ahead and took a broad sweep of the data and did risk assessments and started one of the first information security offices in California. And from there, the rest is history.
Wow. Well, you've had a great career and you've done some wonderful things. And you wrote an excellent piece for the CISO Compass book called Privacy Hunger Games, Change the Rules. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that article?
Sure. Well, at the time, I was working for chief counsel and the receiver in California. And the receiver was appointed by the Supreme Court to take a look at the correctional healthcare system here in California and fix it. It was quite broken. The records were a shambles. The method by which information was sent to and from was archaic. And they called me from another department where I was working and said, hey, we really need some help. Could you come over here and take a look at what we're doing? And upon arrival, we discovered there was no electronic health record. They were providing certain papers in peachy folders and manila folders for inmates in correctional institutions to walk from one appointment to another. So we were really starting from ground zero. It was like the 1940s. So along with building an electronic healthcare record, about a year after I got there, our technology shop was also very concerned with how do we put in privacy by design and fold in security at every phase. So that was sort of the impetus of the events that unfolded that I described in that article.
So bringing together all the electronic health records, I mean, you had to deal with a lot of laws. I know HIPAA was really established in the beginning because of that fear of aggregating all of that information and then that getting disclosed someday.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And the methods by which they were exchanging this information, either by hand, by courier, we would have inmates that would leave correctional institutions run by the state and they would be deployed to a county. And if they were under some medical care, mostly mental health, which has its own, as you know, its own set of rules and regs, they still needed those services. So if you've got a Susie or a Joe who is leaving Calipatria State Institution, but they're being released into Bakersfield County, we would want those records to follow them to Bakersfield County to their parole officer, so the parole officer could ensure there was some seamless medical treatment, particularly for people that were very dedicated to their mental health activities and meeting with psych and wanting to engage the community again and be an upstanding citizen. That rehabilitative piece is really important when you're undergoing mental health treatment. But it was practically impossible to do this without making sure that these records were electronic. So yeah, it was quite an adventure meeting with all the C-level folks from every county. Now, the state of California does not have jurisdiction over counties with regard to, at that time, with regard to how they handled the PII and the PHI. So we could say, please do this all day long, and they didn't have to do it.
Did you find a difference between the state governments and the state government and their security program and the individual counties and city governments?
Not too much with regard to policies and procedures. I believe the counties have a really good understanding of security, privacy, data protection. How we all went about it was quite different because of funding. We have some counties here that have three horse towns, and they sometimes partner with another county. So we may have three counties all sharing the same information because there's three computers up in the mountains in the Sierra, and that's all they're working with. And those are 10 years old and they're dial-up. Then we have other places like San Francisco or Los Angeles that in some ways their processes are more advanced than certain state departments. It's soup to nuts.
So do the larger counties, do they share their technology or put in their budgets, the increased capabilities for the county governments to leverage from?
They do. They're great at partnering, and I commend and have continually commended the CTOs and the CSOs at the 58 counties here in California. They have annual meetings. They have quarterly stand-ups. They try to build in line items when they go to the county board of supervisors. Yeah, they're very communicative. They have a partnership with several state departments. Yeah, there's a lot of great communication that goes on there.
So when you were working with the CIOs and the CTOs and the CISOs, did you find differences between how they approached privacy?
We sure did. Yes. The smaller organizations, obviously much more fluid. Their procedures in a regulator's point of view quite lax, but they had to balance the lack of funding, the need for agility, and their desire to protect information all at the same time. So when you're Nick the tech guy and you have no one within 300 miles of you, yet you're in charge of running the 4 computers and maybe 8 servers that manage all of the information for, say, 2-3 counties, you're going to have to reach out to an LA County or a San Francisco because there's nothing there to get. Mm-hmm. And I think they all did a wonderful job.
So you said that you to get through the a common way of looking at the privacy, that you signed something into law. What was that? What was that like?
Right. Well, what was happening was we were finding out, again, prisoners would leave a state institution, they'd go to a county, their information would get lost or wouldn't be protected in any way. We were having what I'd call gentle breaches, where the information would go to a county office, but it may not go directly to the parole officer, who really was the only one that had the need to know and the right to know. It may end up on somebody else's desk and they would read it. Oh, this person isn't in today, I'll handle this case, but they don't have authorization. And so when the different county level staff would get together, we would request to be in on their meetings or go to their conferences. And we would get presentations, we would get talks. We talked a lot about, yes, we're from the state government, we're here to help, but we wanted to communicate. We didn't want to be dictatorial. We sat down with them, tell us what you need. What are your problems? Do you have funding? How many staffers do you have? Do you have any consulting contracts available? Where can we move money around to solve a problem for you? We're going to make this happen. We just need to figure out how, and also try to build a framework that everyone can use. And part of that was also making sure that the information we provided these counties, that we also provided dashboard for their executives, because we could meet with, CSOs and CISOs all we want. But if you can't get the budget from the board, then you're not going anywhere. So we aggregated quite a bit of financial information, which was, a little different for my security engineers, in an attempt to create a one-stop for the executives. And every month we would send this dashboard to all the CSOs, CTOs, and CPOs of every county and say, this is a meeting we had, this is how far along we've gotten, between, like a 1 or 2 slide PowerPoint and maybe one Gantt chart, just a quick overview. So they felt in the loop and they had enough information to make a financial decision, but they weren't overwhelmed with the information. It's one thing to get in front of your executives or your undersecretary or commissioner's eyes for a minute, but you don't want to inundate them with too much information, because they'll take one look at it and toss it to their assistant and it's going to go in a pile. So I think what was really important was making sure the executives had enough information to make the right decisions, but not too much information to where you would be piled under the paper, so to speak.
The article this podcast is based upon can be viewed in the best-selling cybersecurity leadership book, CISO Compass, Navigating Cybersecurity Leadership Challenges with Insights from Pioneers, available at Amazon.com and other booksellers. So you indicated that you tailored this information for the different leaders to be able to make decisions. What does that tailoring look like? I mean, what sorts of different information did you give to the different leaders so that they could make better decisions?
Thank you. That's a great question. We actually created a chart that listed each county, and based on their board of supervisors list of needs for that particular fiscal year and the next fiscal year, we tried to pull information from their budget and say, we understand that right now, Health and Human Services is taking a big hit. Department of Education is taking a big hit in your county. So is this area, and so is this area. This is how privacy and security can help you decrease cost and increase your ability to safely move your information around. So we're really doing cost benefit analysis for every county. And what helped was setting up individual interviews. I think it took us about 2 weeks. About every hour, we would just be making these conference calls with these C-level folks, and just hearing them. They need to be heard, right? And when counties call state departments, the state of California is huge. I think we have 600, 700,000 people. No, maybe a smaller amount. To be able to get on the horn with someone at that state level and express your concern for your county as a public servant, that goes a long way. And I know it may sound trivial, but I can't tell you how many times years later I still heard from people at the county saying, hey, this fiscal year, guess what? Our line item finally passed. We're able to do X, Y, Z, and 1, 2, 3, and we can check these boxes off. Or, hey, we had OCR knock on our door, and that information that you gave us was so helpful, and the changes we made allowed us to be in compliance. And that as a public servant, that's your job, is to serve your public. And part of that was our partnerships with the county offices.
Mm-hmm. So they saw that you really were there to help them.
Exactly. Yes, we hope.
So yeah, I think that's interesting that you had, no authority for, telling them how where they could send PHI or how to send it outside their organization. So how did you navigate that, to get that consensus so that, that you are operating in a secure environment?
Thank you. Another great question. I hearken back to the reason why I got into the business in the first place. A law was passed to protect the public. And so I went to my team, and as we were brainstorming ideas how we can get this done, I said, why don't we write the law? Let's just change the game. Right now we feel locked into not having any authority. The counties feel locked into not having any wiggle room and feeling the pressures of complying with state and federal law, both with no funding to make it happen. So let's create purpose. And I think as oversight agencies, sometimes we tend to forget that these laws aren't meant to be restrictive, in the sense that we don't want to hinder the counties and cities in doing their job. We need to write a law that's going to support them. And so when we were brainstorming, I have a great memory of sitting in this room with a big whiteboard, and we have a facilitator, and we're bouncing around ideas. And it was one of those light bulb moments. I said, why don't we just write the law? We're beating our head against the wall trying to play this game. Let's just change the arena. So luckily I had a lawyer working for me at the time, and we authored some information and went up the chain of command through legal. And I think it only took about a year, and we changed the law. And as I recall, the law states something to the effect of "thou shalt use encryption." I mean, they weren't even using encryption to share the information in email. So we're literally starting at a baseline. The counties just needed something. So we thought, sometimes the direct way is the easiest and the right way. So that's the way we went.
And what was the law that was changed or added?
I don't recall the AB or the SB, but the content of the law indicated the exchange of information would be either electronic and encrypted or paper and courier. That's it. Just something very simple.
Mm-hmm. And then you gave them the guidance as to how to make that happen on top of that.
Well,
to support
while we were authoring the law, we would call different counties and have them participate in the conference calls with them. We'd get a team of folks on speaker and say, if we went this route, how would this support you? We had a data center up here in Sacramento run by the state where we had space, and we had the encrypted FTP, and we had all this technology in place that we could use. But we needed to make sure that the State Department could handle the load if the counties wanted to use that service. And most of them did. It was very low cost. The infrastructure was already there. We just needed to get buy-in from the counties. It makes people nervous when you have someone else handle your PII and your PHI. So there were lots of contractual agreements and a lot of MOUs, again, driven by the county, because we're there to serve them. And they needed the help.
I know we have, we've had several privacy laws, and California has always been a place where these laws start, right? and then we end up with a lot of state laws, to help out the privacy with that. Do you think we'll ever get to a federal a federal law for these things, or do you think that's not realistic?
Yes and no. Yes, I think we'll get there, not this administration, maybe the next. And no, I don't think it's realistic for a lot of states and for a lot of different services that states provide. Now I'll explain, excuse me, what I mean there. From the federal perspective, I think there are too many irons in the fire with the pandemic and with the military right now for the administration to fully focus on what USHHS and OCR will be doing with regards to PII and PHI in the foreseeable future. The more minutia is that counties within most states in the United States already have a certain amount of security and privacy in place. And I think right now they're keeping their head above water with people going in and out of work on and off site. They're balancing remote workers with remote learning, with people coming on site and then having to go back out for 2 or 3 weeks because of COVID, or maybe 4 months because of COVID. And there's probably some rule bending going on right now. Mm-hmm. So no, I unfortunately don't see anything changing in that theater anytime in the next few years. Sure.
So this has been fantastic. I think it's great to see, how the different areas of government can support each other and exchange information to make things much better. What other advice would you like to leave us with before we close?
I sure would like to see the privacy officers, the security officers, and the chief technology folks create that triad and be a one unit body reporting to their boards and reporting to their stockholders. If they don't already have a seat at the table, then be one unit and take your concerns forward. And for folks in those positions to remember, you don't have to be confined by the rules that are as they are written today. If you're in private industry, lobby to get the laws changed. If you're in public service, author the legislation, take it to your legal shop and get the laws changed. But we can change the game if we want to. We just need to figure out how.
Great perspective. Thanks, Samantha. It's been a pleasure talking to you as always, and really appreciate your time and your contribution to the CISO Compass book.
Thank you, Todd. Great to be here.
Cybereason is the champion for today's defenders, providing an endpoint security platform to prevent, detect, and respond to malicious operations on computers, mobile devices, servers, and the cloud. Cybereason. End cyber attacks from endpoints to the enterprise to everywhere. Learn more at cybereason.com/CISO stories.